anybody ever tells you, I know a hit when I hear it, you should run to the hills.
Your very first song you released was with Aerosmith.
That's right.
Ryan Tedder and Justin Timberlake, Apologize. You produced that, right?
I did. That's a crazy story, actually.
Are there some particular moments when you work with Adele that are memorable?
Every moment.
Moving on to Taylor Swift.
That was crazy. I'm the music producer for both Wicked movies. It's just been the most intense thing. Phone rings. Greg, there's somebody who wants to talk to you. Okay. George Martin gets on the phone.
Welcome to my podcast, Songs You Know, and today we have a very special guest, Greg Wells. And for everyone who may not know Greg Wells, I'm sure you know a lot of the work Greg has done. He's worked with artists like Adele, Quincy Jones, Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande, Dua Lipa, Missy Elliott, Andrew Lloyd Webber. My daughter would be most excited about you having worked with 21 Pilots. I think she's going to jump for joy when she hears that. Elton John, you name them, you've worked with them. It's incredible. But Greatest Showman is where you got a Grammy for, producing the whole, every song on the movie, right?
With the help of the songwriters, yes.
That's incredible, yeah. And Michael Bublé, you got a Grammy as well. That's, I mean, amazing. And then also, I think one of the biggest probably, Apologize, with Ryan Tedder and Justin Timberlake. You produced that, right?
I did. That's a crazy story, actually.
We can go right there. I'd love to hear the story.
Well, I like sharing it because it's. I'm speaking to the younger version of me. This was 2005, and at that point I'd had some success as a songwriter. I had almost zero success as a record producer, and that was a really pivotal year for me. My father died that summer. I met Katy Perry that year. I met Ryan Tedder that year. I met the artist MIKA that year from London. I wound up having a lot of action with all three of those people.
Yeah.
And it really kind of transformed my career. I was never really in pop music. I was kind of, I don't know what the hell I was, but I definitely wasn't like making pop music or even considered for it. But something about that year kind of pulled me toward that. I think Cara DiGuardi had a lot to do with that, actually.
Love Cara, yeah.
And I think that's why she wanted to work with me, that I was making like Rufus Wainwright records or OTEP records, who's like this female-fronted death metal brilliant band.
You did? Death metal?
I did a death metal record for 7 months
with
OTEP that I'm still super proud of.
Do death metal people actually really mix that loud as well, or do you mix it really quiet?
You know what? Most of them mix kind of quietly.
That's so interesting, because you think death metal is like the big wall, and
I mean, certainly live it's not quiet.
Yeah.
But to retain any sort of perspective, I mean, it's occasionally and I think other mixers will crank and get loud for a bit.
But you hear that music loud, your ears won't stop ringing anymore because it covers all the frequencies, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
it's like white noise.
Instant hearing loss. Anyway, so there I am with the incredibly talented Ryan Tedder, who really at that point no one really knew about except for a few people.
Yeah.
And I started recommending him for songwriting sessions. And I remember my manager at the time, who I won't name, but I understand why he reacted that way. I recommended him for some stuff. And I remember him saying, "Really? Are you sure that guy Ryan's that good? Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, he is that good. Just put him in." I recommended Ryan actually for a session to write with the artist Jesse McCartney, who was the only artist I had some success with as a record producer. I came in as the final producer on a song called Beautiful Soul. And they were writing for his next record. I said, "You should write with this guy, Ryan Tedder. He's amazing."
Yeah.
So they wrote the song Bleeding Love.
Oh, wow.
That day.
And Jesse didn't want it?
I don't know what happened. I think it was originally not a ballad. I think it was more up-tempo, mid-tempo.
Yeah.
Anyway, the song came from that. I'm not answering your question. So there I very luckily got hired to produce OneRepublic's. They were called Republic at the time, but they had to change their name. Their debut album. They had great songs on it, like Stop and Stare, an amazing song called Mercy. And they had this phenomenal song called Apologize. We were a few weeks in to the album. They would very quietly, not Ryan, but the other guys would kind of come up to me and sort of whisper in the hallway, you know that song, Apologize, we don't really want to do that. And I would say, why?
It's too pop.
They just said it doesn't sound like us. It sounds... See, Ryan Tedder apprenticed with Timbaland, the producer, for 2 years.
Wow.
That was a contest that he won on MTV when he was much younger than that. Something about entering a boy band. I think Lance Bass was also one of the judges on the panel. Maybe there was an NSYNC connection. Ryan won the thing, not surprisingly, and Timbaland, the producer, was one of the judges on that panel. And I think it was like you get to spend a week in the studio with Timbaland.
And that
it wound up being
2 years.
2 years.
That's amazing.
So he just lived on the bus with him, watched all those Missy Elliott records get produced, and everything Tim was doing, like in the height of his genius. I mean, he's still like an insane. I think he's one of the best record makers ever. I can't believe what he does. So he's very influenced, especially in Ryan's early days. He was very, very, very influenced by the creative footprint of Timbaland. How could you not be, especially if you're with him for that long? So Apologize had a Timbaland vibe, and the guys were like, we're a rock band from Colorado, it just doesn't sound like and I said, well, I understand that, but it's kind of partly my job. Let's just see what happens. If it's terrible, no one's ever going to hear it, I'll never let it leave my little studio. Nope, we don't want to do it. And then at one point I was sitting with Ryan in the control room of this other studio where I was for a long time, and the band they came in and they blocked the doorway, and there was like mutiny on the Bounty, and they just said, okay, we're having a band meeting, and the topic of the meeting is we're not doing Apologize.
Oh wow. And you fought for it.
And I was just like, what? And poor Ryan, I'm sure he felt so conflicted. He's very dear friends with all these guys. They're all still in the band together. And I just kept saying the same thing, like we have to try it. It's a great song. I get what you're saying. You're right. It doesn't sound like the other songs, but let's see what would happen. And they just felt so strong. So anyway, we all went home. Again, I had no juice as a record producer, right? I had no cash. I had no perceived power. I had no real, other than Beautiful Soul, which did well, but I was one of several producers. I came in at the end to kind of tweak it, and I mixed it. I didn't have any like big trophy on the wall saying Greg is a successful producer, because I wasn't. But I felt so strongly about that song, having no clue it was going to be a hit. I just thought this is one of the best songs on the record.
Wow. I
called Ryan. I said, we have to do this song, and the only thing I can think of is I think I got to call the band and say, guys, don't come in for the next couple of days. And I don't want them to be angry. But you get one shot at making this debut.
Sabotage their cars. Slice the tires, something, so they don't know
what to do. I mean, they pulled a big move.
It's the funny thing about a hit song. Like, I've been there many times where even Beyonce played me Single Ladies before it came out. And when you hear a hit song, and it's not a hit yet, but there is the song makes everyone nervous, and everyone thinks like, oh my God, is this genius or is it too obvious? Because it feels so instant. And I think there's always this fear that this is too obvious. This is too like.
That's amazing what you said. It makes everyone nervous.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. You're right, because it does make you. It sets off all these like, I don't know. There's no word for it. Yeah,
people start fighting over this song. They start debating it. Some say this can't be, and others, that's that. We have to have it.
And nobody knows what a hit is going to be. If anybody ever tells you, I know a hit when I hear it. I know this is going to be a hit. I know this won't be a hit. You should run to the hills. Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
The real hits sound like nothing out there because they are game changers and they do something that isn't there yet.
Right.
And that's the scary thing. Like, it's something completely different, but everyone has a very strong reaction. And I think the one thing that hits have in common that they make everybody feel something. And whatever it is they feel, but it's like everyone feels something. And a lot of other songs, some people feel something, others don't. And
that's really
could
beautifully
live without
put.
it.
That's beautifully put. I mean, that is what great writing does, right? It does elicit a reaction.
Yeah.
Even if it makes you, even if you're like, I hate that, it's still, that's a strong reaction. So anyway, Ryan said, he listened to my little spiel, and I meant it. And he said, okay, I agree with you, but let me be the one to call the guys.
Nice.
I said, okay, that is better. Let me know what happens. And he called me a couple hours later. He said, all right, I'll see you tomorrow.
Great.
So we showed up and we did it. And to the guys' credit, they came in a couple days later and they heard it. And they were kind of like, it was a really awkward, weird vibe. And, and one of the guys who was kind of leading the pack of the the finger wagging, he said, "Can I add something to this? Can I put my instrument on
please?
it?"
Yeah.
You know, like, "Do you mind if I'm like, yeah, go ahead." And then, you know, the drummer wanted to try something, and so it kind of became. And then we made the album, and then they got dropped.
Oh no.
Yeah, Tim Devine was the head of West Coast A&R in Columbia.
He dropped them?
No.
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 Them back up.
He quit because he didn't like the new guy that came in as president.
Wow.
And he said, "I refuse to answer to this person." The guy was an interesting guy. He only lasted 10 months in the job.
Wow.
But Tim, who's a storied A&R guy from Aerosmith to Katy Perry, Tim's the reason I know Katy.
Yeah, and I read that your very first song you released was with Aerosmith.
That's right.
That's insane. And your second song you ever released as a writer was with Celine Dion.
Also correct.
Oh my God.
Yeah, my songwriting career began with a sort of big bang of like Hubble telescope scale, and then it was just crickets for years and years and years after that.
So I read something on your Wikipedia page that I wanted to talk about, where it said that when you were 12 years old, you were in a wheelchair.
11 to 13, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Oh, it's so...
I know it's a downer, but it's probably something where you've learned a lot, and it's something I have a lot of respect for, too.
I do.
That experience must be so valuable, so humbling, and so like you see the world through entirely different eyes suddenly.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those. I was walking home from school. I had about almost a mile walk home from school in rural Canada where I grew up, and was walking by myself. I just turned 11 at the beginning of 6th grade, or grade 6 as we say in Canada. And I felt like it was my right hip. I felt like a knife had just gone bam and stabbed me in the hip.
Out of nowhere.
And I fell over. I didn't know what it was. What was that? I stood up. There was no more pain. I walked home. What the heck was that? It happened again maybe a week later in school. I was taking my chair off the desk at the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
You know, the janitor would like put it up in the sweep. I took it off. It happened again. I fell over with the chair. What is going on?
Wow.
And I started limping a little bit. And then we realized I had this weird disease called Perthes disease. It's named after the guy that discovered it. Normally infants to 3-year-olds get it, and it just sort of goes away because at that point when you're that young, your hip bone is... I'm not a doctor, but there's a lot of cartilage. It's not all bone, and it sort of repairs itself.
Wow.
But by the time I was 11, it was all like hard bone. The ball stops growing, and it becomes flat like that, and then it kind of comes out like that. It's really painful.
Wow.
So the treatment today is very different. It's an outpatient treatment. They just give you a new hip ball on the top of your femur, and that's it. At the time, I was in these crazy A-frame casts where they had to do some surgery so I could spread my legs even wider. The idea being that if my leg was way out here, it would jam itself back in, which kind of worked.
How was that experience emotionally?
Oh, it sucked. I mean, I was like just starting to go through puberty, and it's a very vulnerable time, you know, middle school.
Did you have friends that stuck it out with you and were mentoring and helping and being there for you?
Kind of, yeah. There certainly, kind of. And my parents really rallied to the cause. I remember my mom had to make like special pants for me because with this A-frame cast, the doctors, so Canadian, they had a hockey stick. I'm not kidding you, a CCM hockey stick holding, like plastered onto the cast, so it kept them like an
crazy.
A. It would look like a letter A.
Wow.
So I couldn't pull pants on, you know, so she made like Velcro shorts. They were like Velcro here, and then whatever, it worked.
But then it just went away again.
Sort of. I can't really run. I played a lot of basketball before that, and I wasn't like overly into sports, but I loved basketball. So there wasn't a lot of sports after that. It was all music, but it was all music after that. Like
so what was the magical trigger where you said, I want to make music, I love music?
I think it was that time.
Was that time? Of
lying in bed for months and not being able to... I just had all this time for like rumination and imagination, and so bored out of my mind. Like the power of boredom.
Yeah.
I have 6 kids now, and I'm alarmed at how not bored they are. Right?
Yeah. When my daughter is bored, I say that's where creativity starts.
Thank you.
If you don't get bored, you won't be creative.
I don't know. You know, I think every older generation has always been like, kind of finger wagging at the young generation. Hopefully it doesn't destroy creativity, but I do know that the reason I think I have an ability to be proficient at music is because I was so bored. That helped a lot. I think if I had a lot of stuff pulling my collar, dopamine hits from the phone, and I don't know that I would play a whole bunch of different instruments like I do. I don't know that I would have studied classical piano in the way that I did. I don't know. So unlikely.
What were the first instruments you tried then?
Drums.
Mm-hmm.
Drums, and anything I could bang on. Mm-hmm. Really, really, really. I'm still this way. Mm-hmm. Just, I don't know. Just rhythm is like a thing that kind of goes through me like I have to breathe, like I'm constantly drumming in my head or my hands are tapping. I grind my teeth in rhythm. My teeth are all like there's stuff missing in my teeth. I should. I don't, but I should.
Yeah, you need to.
I've been told by many a dentist.
So what is your process? I perceive you as someone who is really good at not just writing records, but finishing records. I think you are one of the best finishers there is, who like sonically to have a grasp on what this record is going to sound, what the instruments are doing, how everything fits together. I think you're such a genius with that.
Thank you. It's very sweet of you. You're quite the genius.
I mean,
yourself.
proven. I don't even have to.
Well, it's an overused word, and I'm not putting down what you're saying at all. But it's just hard work, right? It's just like focused on. If you do something for a long period of time and you're super serious about it, and you focus on it, you're probably going to be pretty good at it. I mean, for me, growing up in rural Canada with no older siblings to turn me on to cool music, and a family that we weren't a professionally musical family. Not even close. I mean, no one did music professionally. In where I grew up. So, and my parents' taste was like old show tunes, and like light Christian folk music. It became so exotic for me when I would see like footage on TV of a band playing. Yeah, I remember there was even some talk. We got a lot of. I'm from Peterborough, Ontario, which is kind of close to Rochester and Buffalo, New York. So we would get a lot of television programming from those stations. And there was some local talk show every morning out of one of those cities, Buffalo, and there was like a live jazz trio, and I remember always watching the drummer and trying to figure out how the hi-hat was moving by itself. Like I would watch that every morning as a kid, and watching him hit the cymbal and watching the piano player. Just this, it was so exotic. It still hits me that way at the age of 56 now. I just turned 56. Like when I walk past a music store, I can't not go in. Even though like this kind of is a music store at this point.
It pretty much is a museum of the best things and most inspiring things that ever came your way.
Which is a little disappointing now. I walk into a music store and I'm like, I already know. I have that, but I still have that feeling. So my process is very influenced by that feeling of like, this is whatever that is. It's so far away from me. It holds such power over my imagination. It feels like I'll never be able to go to that place. So it's very exciting for me. And when I was 19, somebody gave me a book, an autobiography of this great Japanese film director named Akira Kurosawa. And the last chapter of the book, he talks about his life, which is fascinating. He's descended from an old samurai family. His older brother was a big influence on him. They had a complicated relationship. It's a great book. It's a fast read. Little paperback. The last chapter is him giving advice to younger filmmakers, but you can apply that to anything creative. Certainly music or anything creative. And one of the things he said was, if you want to become a good film director, first of all, just immerse yourself and marinate in all the classics of music and literature and art. Really just soak it up. Don't even try to analyze it. Just take it in. Even if you don't understand it, just try to take it in. And then after you do that for a few years, try to learn how to write a story. Try to learn what a camera lens does. Try to learn how to act. Try to learn how to light a set. Try to learn how to operate a boom mic. Try to learn how to blah, 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 blah. Everything to do with making a movie. And he said, if you are able to master all of those things, then maybe you have a shot at being a good director.
It's so funny because there are two completely opposing ways of looking at it. I had a flight back from Europe once, and next to me was a successful Italian movie producer, and he told me that growing up in Italy as a movie producer or as anyone creative, you're surrounded by Michelangelo, all the greats from the last thousands of years, and it's everyone like, who do you think you are that you can even dare to create something? These are the greats. Whereas I feel in America, as far as history, it's a lot thinner, and it's like clean slate almost. And you create something, and people like it or they don't, but they don't always look at, oh my God, here's Michelangelo, here is Da Vinci, here is da-da-da, and are you anywhere close? You'll never be as good as them. And I feel quite often if someone intuitively does, like music, I think is just a feeling. And if someone intuitively writes their first song and it makes somebody feel something, but they've never listened to anyone else or studied anyone else's music or don't know what anyone else is doing, sometimes that might have more of a novelty value. Could. Or as if you've studied the encyclopedia of all music that's ever been written before and might even be tempted to create something similar or be too much inspired. I mean, that's also the whole theory of going to music school, where you learn so much about it, and then you might approach it more from a brainy thing versus just gut-driven, like, this feels right, I'm doing it, I don't care.
I ran into that. I mean, I have both experiences. I was very trained in classical piano, but in terms of like anything that wasn't that, just, you know, I was constantly playing songs off the radio. Always had my ear and focused toward commercial music, pop music, and would improvise all the time at the piano. But because my parents and my family in the world I lived in, like, no one knew what jazz was. No one, you know, so I didn't, I had no exposure to like proper improvisation, you know? So I just do my own thing. Now, when I went to music school, it does become, as you were saying, it does become an exercise of analysis. And that did start to seep into my music making.
The brain might find its way between the gut and the...
It did. It became a bit of a blockade, and it took me a couple of years to kind of wring that out of my own towel.
You're such an incredible piano player. I've seen some of also what you've posted. It's so amazing. And just, I'm also a huge fan of piano improvisation. Keith Jarrett, I'm sure you...
That's the one.
That's the one,
But, you know, Bach was Mozart. All composition is...
I heard that Chopin was actually at the time more revered for his improvisation than for the compositions he wrote down. And there's some records of people going to Chopin concerts, and it was all about the improvisation. And then he would sometimes play some of these written down things. That's all we know now. But I think the magic is lost. And I wish someone should make a movie about the improvisation of Chopin.
Can you imagine like getting to time travel and like, let's go tonight to a Chopin
concert? That's one thing I'd want
watch him just jam, you know. But Oscar Peterson had a great quote: "Composition is just improvisation slowed down." It all comes from the same wellspring. But the cool thing about composition is you can pick the winning ideas. You know, the great thing about live theater or certainly improvisation is that's the thrill of it. You're sort of downhill skiing, and whatever happens is what happens. But with composition, it's more like sculpture, and you can really
double black slopes down.
Yes, exactly. And if you wipe out, and that's okay. You know, in improvisation, you're not going to die. You might die a creative death in front of an audience.
Keith Jarrett, if there's big Carnegie Hall and he plays without a concept and plays one note, and everything else just happens, it sometimes goes wrong or goes somewhere he doesn't want it to go, or he leaves, which he's done many times.
I've watched him get really angry. Too many lights on.
So I want to talk about how our lives have intersected. So we're born the same year, and I think our careers also, we worked with many of the same artists, and
I've been lucky enough to produce a bunch of your songs.
You have, yes.
Mix some of the songs that you've written and produced.
Colby Calais, I do love that song.
I just heard that on the radio a week ago.
I love what you made out of it. It's really good.
Well, when I'm handed a song like that, that's just like a producer's dream come true. It's like a movie director being handed like the best script. You know, it is. It's just a song like that sort of records itself.
And Colby is such a sweetheart.
She's
what a great artist. Still love her to death. She's amazing.
But that was a great song for her as well.
I've always perceived you as the very gentleman, humble, nurturing person. And I've perceived myself at these times whenever our lives intersected as more like the egotistical, don't care about other people, very much me, and jealous, and like all the negative stuff. And I always thought
I want to be that in me too.
I felt I want to be a little bit more like you. So, many times, to be honest. Now in retrospect, also.
I mean, I have all of that cooking as well inside of me. I think
I never felt that. I always thought, wow, he's such a gentleman and well-spoken, and
well, that's super sweet of you. I mean, I've never experienced you to be the way you're describing.
No?
At
least once when you invited me to one of your writing camps.
What happened? I don't remember what you were referring to.
You're doing these castles, right?
Oh yeah.
Castle, right? And once you invited me, and then I said, oh, I need to bring Josh, I need to bring Afshin, I need to bring all my people. And I got an email from you saying, wait a minute, is this my camp?
Oh, I'd like to reread that.
And I was like, I get it. I've been overbearing again, and I've been.
That's a high
I'm
pressure
rude
thing.
Sometimes I feel, and
yeah, but you're passionate. Like, I'm the same way. I need what I need to do what I do. And if you were writing an email saying like, well, actually, if I'm going to uproot and go to rural France, in some 13th century castle, like I kind of need my people around me. Like, I get that. But when I'm putting that, I don't do that event anymore.
No,
because it's just
But you
stressful.
did it several years, right?
I did it for a long time, and
you have great people going there. Do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about this writing camp you organized?
Oh my goodness, it changed my life personally and professionally, hugely. My very first manager, bizarrely, was Miles Copeland, who managed the band The Police. He forced them to record the song Roxanne. They were embarrassed by it. They didn't want to do it. He kind of silently produced the session. He won't ever publicly take credit for it, but he was there.
Wow.
He sort of forced them to do it. They were embarrassed. They were trying to be like a punk band.
Yeah.
They thought this song was too soft. Anyway, his brother is Stuart Copeland, the drummer of The Police, one of my favorite drummers. And then he managed Sting's career for 20-something years, maybe 25 years. And I met him in around 1994 through a wonderful, wonderful music maker named Tina Clark, who I met when she hired me to play guitar on a McDonald's commercial.
Yeah.
I used to play in a lot of jingles as a session musician. Lots of Barbie commercials.
Wow.
Campbell Soup. Lots of McDonald's. And I was a vegetarian at the time.
Yeah.
So anyway, she started a little indie label with Miles Copeland, and she just started talking to me. Anyway, she introduced me to Miles, and I'm still friends with both of them. And Miles sold his record company, IRS Records, storied indie label. They had the Go-Go's and super cool bands like the English Beat and the Alarm and Wall of Voodoo, and just really interesting label. Tons of cool bands. And he sold it to EMI. He made some sort of, windfall, and he bought a castle in the southwest of France at the bottom of the Loire Valley. It's beautiful. And one of his very best ideas, he's really an idea guy, and he's a huge fan of music. He's not a musician himself, but he loves it. His idea was, what am I going to do with this? We can't just take vacations here. And he thought, what if I do some sort of like songwriting event where because he had he was a manager and he was running a record company, so he had artists and he had writers, and what if he invites his roster, and then he invites people like us to go there, interface with them, they all stay there, they all eat really well, something will probably come of that, and even if one song is a hit, it will pay for the event and more.
And he would take publishing or some cut from it?
He would take a cut from whatever his deal was with his people that were there on his roster.
Right. Yeah.
And then if we came and we had our own publishing or had a publishing deal elsewhere, then
makes perfect sense. Yeah.
He wouldn't take any of that.
Yeah.
So he got a piece of, by virtue of the fact that some of his people were in the ecosystem. And so I started going to that, and I was one of his people at the time. And
you did that for a couple of years, like you helped run this camp, right? And
I wasn't running it at that time. I was very much like, who is this kid? That's where I wrote that song. Well, I watched Carole King and Mark Hudson write this song called The Reason, and like every 10 minutes I'd go, are you sure we should say the word fuck and not, you sure it should be a bad word? And like little Canadian interjections. Should it be an F minor chord? Maybe it should be. It was like I'm sitting in the room with these two titans.
Is it the one, You Are the Reason, or the one with Leona?
You Are the Reason. That one.
That one, yeah. They're both great records.
So that was that the first castle I went to? No, the first castle I went to, I did not have a good time. And I had to really be convinced to go to the second one. Thank goodness. that happened because that's when that song came out of it. And that sold, 31 million albums, which paid for a few castles. You know, Smiles had a piece of I was 1/3 writer on that. I met Carole King there on that day.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I met her the night before, but that was our first writing day of that event. And we wrote the song called The Reason. I remember demoing it. I was like playing all the instruments and Carole sang it. And it wound up going on the same Celine Dion album that had the Titanic theme on it. So I think it might be her biggest album, Let's Talk About Love. And Celine sang she sang the shit out of it. There's footage of her singing it in the studio. Sir George Martin came out of retirement to produce that song. He called me. I think Carole had him call me when Celine was done the vocal. I'm in my like tiny little one-room studio and the phone rings. Carole's like, Greg, there's somebody who wants to talk to you. Okay. George Martin gets on the phone and talks effusively about, he's like thanking me. I'm in my 20s. Like, I don't know what's going on. And the second I started thanking him, he didn't want to hear it. You know how some celebrities are quite happy to be puffed up and thanked. He's like, he just shut it down. Yeah. But he was so sweet. Anyway, but the next castle after that, Carole brought her daughter, Louise Goffin, and I met her there almost a year after that first castle when I met Carole, which was my second castle. And there were no like real romantic sparks there with me and Louise at the time, but I liked the music she was making, and I guess vice versa. We eventually became girlfriend and boyfriend, and we have 2 children together now. We're not together anymore, but we actually live on the same street.
Those are your first 2 children?
We have 2 kids,
and you have 5 children?
5,000 children.
5,000 children.
It's with my stepson.
We don't even know.
Hopefully not. With my stepson, it's 6 kids.
Wow.
In total, yeah. So, Louise and I have 2 boys that are now in their 20s, both musicians. I tried to convince them not to be, but that didn't work.
Same. I give the same advice. Don't do it. It's just going to bring disappointment and frustration.
If you have to do it, then you have to do it.
Yeah.
If you don't have to do it, maybe find another way to keep the lights on and then do it the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to turn it into your job unless you have to turn it into your job.
100%.
How old were you when you started writing songs?
Me, I'm 5-6 years old. They weren't good songs, but they were songs.
That's when you started.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't really start till right around then, like my mid-20s.
Wow.
I was such a sort of performing monkey. Like I just loved playing music. And I remember somebody in my teens said, you should try writing. I was like, it's too slow. I just want to play.
Coming to the now quickly, you're not performing, but you should be performing, right? Don't you feel like you would love to perform?
I miss it very much.
I would want to see Greg Wells performing Greatest Showman songs and your Adele songs and your biggest songs with whoever artists you can get on stage, which I'm sure are superstars. And maybe with an orchestra or with a piano. You're such an incredible piano player. I would pay for that.
Wow. Thank you. I think I think I have just been so conditioned to being like the behind the scenes guy. It would take a minute to find that gear shift. But I appreciate that. Maybe.
Let's talk about today. Like, what's a day in the life of Greg Wells? Like a typical work day when you're working on, right now you're working on something very important, right?
Well, since the beginning of the summer of 2022, I have been just full steam ahead on a tiny music team. I'm the music producer for both Wicked movies, and there's also 2 album soundtracks, one for each film.
That's a lot of songs too, right?
It's a lot of songs. In the movie, on the soundtrack album, we sutured them together so that it's just, like on the first soundtrack album, I think it's 11 songs. In the movie, though, because it's a movie and you had to cut the songs up for dialogue and different things, it wound up being, I think over 40 tracks.
Wow.
Because it's over a 2.5 hour movie. But anyway, I've been on that. I was hired to work on it before most of the cast was hired. Ariana and Cynthia were hired before me, not much before me. We didn't know who was going to play the wizard. There was no, Jonathan Bailey was not hired to be Fiyero yet. We didn't know Michelle Yeoh was coming on board. It was and it's just been nothing but that for pretty much 7 days a week.
Wow.
Late hours,
So how do you start? You wake up. Is the phone next to you or is it in another room?
It's next to me.
Is it on airplane mode?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
No, it's on silent mode.
Silent mode. I would turn the Wi-Fi off.
Sometimes I do.
It's good.
Sometimes I do. I will turn the Bluetooth off.
And then what do you do? Do you wake up, check your emails, or do you wake up and walk the dog or do something?
By the way, I try to keep it far enough away from me that any EMF things should not be hitting me.
It's a real thing, EMF. And people don't talk about it because it's not cool. But I've had my EMF episodes. That's a whole nother chapter.
Yes, I used to have a thing that could measure it.
Mm-hmm, me too.
One thing I really learned
the whole
about
room, everything. It came cyclical. I had it twice in my life that it was debilitating, and I had to just get away from everything.
It's a thing.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
No one believes it because we can't see it.
Yeah.
In the same way that no one believed there was cholera in the well in Soho, London, that gave everyone the Black Plague. Like, we can't see it. It's fine. It's water. Right. I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
Don't drink that water.
You know, we started out at what's a day in the life of Greg Wells.
So doctors didn't wash their hands. On Wicked, it was just like, we have to win the war. There was just so much to do. It's very complicated.
So you dream of work and you get up in your mind, I'm working already?
The songs are just, I submitted a long time ago to, when you work on a piece of music and it's just in your head and you can't get rid of it. So it stopped bothering me.
You live in that movie right now.
Yeah, I'm the Wicked Witch flying around in my own little broomstick. I love having... I really connect to a lot of the music. I really connect to the story of the Wicked Witch. Wicked, for someone who may be watching this who doesn't know the story, it's a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, and it's kind of it came from a book that was just trying to figure out, like, why is the Wicked Witch so? What's her problem? Like, why is she so pissed off? Why is she so? Yeah. And it turns out, according to the story, she was actually really, like, lovely and very, very kind of misunderstood. And it's the ultimate underdog story. Mm-hmm. And then she realizes the wizard is actually like this terrible fascist dictator, and she's the only one that can really take him on. Wow. And the character's supposed to be 18 or 19 years old. Mm-hmm. It's powerful stuff. Mm-hmm. So I felt very compelled to help tell that story. Of course, they had an insane team with an incredible director and amazing talent all over the place. I had lots of things kind of like, it made it very easy to get up and attack it. Mm-hmm. It's just been the most intense thing. Like I know it's been over 2 years. It doesn't feel like it's been 2 years.
It's crazy. And so you're interacting with the movie director. Is it a musical as well on stage, or it's the movie you're working on? Or you said you were working on two things at the same time?
So Wicked has been, for 20 years, it's been a musical on Broadway. Yes. And around the world, still playing in London. I think it's played in Japan, it's played in Germany, it's played all over the place. Lots of translations of it. Universal for many years has been looking at making it into a movie. Mm-hmm. There was another director attached to it for a number of years, and for whatever reason, they parted ways. And then John M. Chu, who I got to work with on In the Heights, he got hired to direct Wicked. And John, at some point, decided that it really needed to be two movies. Two movies. It was too much to jam into one. Wow. So like the live Broadway musical, it's Act 1 and Act 2, and it's kind of...
And you're working on the whole package right now.
Yeah, they shot it as one film. Mm-hmm. They took a year to shoot all of it. Mm-hmm. And as you do in movies, it wasn't shot chronologically. Sometimes you have to shoot the ending scene first, just because of whatever budget and location and stuff, availability. And there was just so many moving pieces. The world of Broadway and the world of movies is this sort of four-dimensional, I perceive it as like a four-dimensional matrix of just all of these. It reminds me of that scene in Interstellar when Matthew McConaughey's like kind of descending to this space that winds up behind the bookshelf, and he's talking to just all these things and pieces. They're all like interacting, but it's sort of surreal. And
so you're 100% in that world right now.
In that world, and working with people who are totally fluid and comfortable dealing with all of those elements. And I'm like, I've been making records for 30 years. So
do you feel it takes away from the Greg Wells, like from you as a human and from you as you have your own dreams, your own songs you want to do here and there, your projects. If big artist calls and wants to work with you, you have to say no.
I've had to say no to a lot of stuff in the last couple of years. Some really interesting stuff has shown up, and I'm like, I can't. But I'm really in love with working on this thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's like a big milestone. It's like just like bigger than Greatest Showman. It's like this one epic thing that the world knows, and if you do it right, you will be remembered.
I want the story to impact people the way that it has impacted me. It really hits with young girls. Mm-hmm. It's a real female empowerment story. Wow. Like like Ariana Grande is the perfect proof of concept. I mean, she saw it 20 years ago when she was 10, and she saw it again and again and again and again and again. And that's a common thing where young-ish girls will just see it repeatedly. It just blows their lights out, and I understand why. I have my own inner young girl in me. It kills me.
So what do you do to balance this out? I mean, do you
nothing?
Do you surf? Do you run? Do you jog? Do you play tennis?
I sleep.
You got to do something.
Nope.
No,
I'm not very balanced. I'm really. I forget that I have a body.
That's not a good thing.
I know it's not a good thing.
But you have children, so you got to spend time with them. Do you?
I have not been able to see them as much as I want to. That's been my one.
You have to because they grow up so quickly. And
believe me, I know. And they don't care if I'm helping make a good movie.
They do. They might pretend, but you mean that the movie? Yeah, but they will care if they get a daddy daughter or daddy father. Like if they get a day with the dad, that means so much to a child.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying.
Yeah,
you're right. They care a lot that I'm not putting them to bed all the time, or that I'm not as available. And they've been complaining, but they don't. What I'm saying is they don't care if the movie's good.
Right. Yeah.
They're never going to thank me for making a good record.
But as a father, as a parent, I totally underestimated how much it meant to my children to even just give them half a day. Or just recently, I did a trip with my daughter up the coast for a week, and
beautiful. She
keeps talking about it. It's something that really impacted her, and just to give a child this real attention for a while, and it's so meaningful. And also my dad, before he passed, we went for a week to Lake Garda together, and it's the only time we ever did that. My dad and I spent a week together, and it was so profound. And
I bet
to have this real attention from a parent, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I love being a dad. Like I love it. I think that my children are before being a father, for me, due to my own dysfunction and just the way that I kind of approached this, and it was just all music. It was like 1,000,000,000% music.
Yeah,
and everything else would
totally
fall by the
know
wayside.
how it can go. Like it could just be everything you need to eat and breathe, and everything else doesn't matter.
And I did. And the minute Elijah was born, my first child, it was like, oh. Music's great, but it does not even come close to like that.
Were you there at the birth?
Oh yeah.
Like we were just bawling. It was just such an insane experience that puts everything else makes everything else irrelevant. Seeing your own child born is insane.
I took 3 months off when he was born.
Wow.
And it destroyed my career for 2 years because I couldn't I'm happy I did it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't everyone thought I was just busy forever, and that whatever momentum I had going at that time, 1999, the phone stopped ringing for 2 years.
What's on your bucket list? Like how do you see your next 10, 20, 30 years? Are there some big things you want to accomplish? Or
I get more excited about helping other people feel like they can take a swing at expressing themselves, rather than me just accepting the next music related job. Because I'm not new, I'm not young, I've done this for a long time. You and I both
You're a legend now.
Well, likewise, we both had the opportunity to work with the kind of folks that we would dream about working with, the very best of the best of the best of the best of the best. And and we've done it multiple times. And so I like working on stuff that I don't fully understand, which is another reason why I really like working on movies. Because
always learn, everything you touch, it's something that you haven't done before, and that gives you something new and
I try
a challenge. Yeah.
So, and certainly with movies, that's a guarantee.
Climbing a new mountain. Yeah.
It's guaranteed that I'm going to get humbled daily working on movies because there's just so much I don't know about it. So I got the opportunity to buy this beautiful little church in Newfoundland, Canada, which is an island off the east coast of Canada, where my mother's family is from, where my mom is from. And I went there most summers as a kid, too. It's gorgeous. It's like Iceland and Ireland in a washing machine.
Wow.
The sweetest people. It's really incredible. And it's this beautiful little jewel of a church. It's no longer a church, but it is a church, but it's not. It seats 137 people, and acoustically, it's sort of a miracle. It sounds like Studio 2 at Abbey Road. It honestly does. It's not soundproof, so if a truck drives by, you'll hear it. But at night, when there's no traffic, it sounds incredible. So we've turned that into a nonprofit music performance space. I also made it a studio. And so I started a little indie record label there, same thing, where any money that's made from that will go toward like philanthropic things, like going to the fire department, or the ambulance service, or food banks, or
That's great.
Or helping like musicians in.
How big's the village? It's a small village?
Less than 500 people.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a fishing outport.
Everybody knows everybody, and
everyone's related to everybody. Almost everyone looks the same. It's an island.
Yeah. How far is the island from the mainland?
It's not wildly far. The Titanic sank 100 or 200 miles south of it. It's
Whoa, that's how north it is.
Oh yeah, massive icebergs. You'll see them right there. Like in the spring, they come down from the Arctic or Greenland.
And why you're drawn to this place? Is this where that's not where you grew up, no?
No. My mother did. And I was very close to her parents. My dad's parents, he was the youngest of a lot of kids. And so his mother had passed away.
Yeah.
My mother never even met his mother because she had died before they got together. So, and his father died when I was really young. So I didn't have much of a relationship there with them. I'm very close to, I feel like my music probably comes from my mother's mother.
Yeah.
Who's from Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And she's from the area where this church is. My grandfather was born just down the road from this church. So I don't know. I can't explain it. I have this huge pull. I've always had a big pull toward it. I love that it's the opposite of what you and I do here, where we're like making these things that are like trying to take over the world. And it's like very, big and like, bam. And this is like,
it's just the island. Yeah.
And it's just like this very specific pinpoint spot. Wow. There's no spotlights on it. There's no paparazzi, but that's what I love about it.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And that feels really enriching. I like talking to music schools. I like doing little bits of philanthropy whenever I can.
What are the things you're passionate about?
Well, that's really it, actually. Just like I hate seeing music being cut from schools. A guy that I met, I was lucky enough to meet this guy named Austin Butner. He's a really interesting guy. I met him when my first child, Elijah, was in preschool, and one of his kids was in the same preschool, and we were just dads there. He's a very interesting guy. Also, like me, comes from very humble beginnings. And he went on to just all kinds of stuff. It's a wild career. I'm leaving out a lot of details, but he had an incredibly successful career on Wall Street, wound up working for the Clinton administration in Russia, bribed by Vladimir Putin a few times. Like, just a wild, crazy thing. And then got out of government and started a private company, and then decided he wanted to run the LAUSD, the Los Angeles School District, public school. And he did. He ran it for 3 years. He was the superintendent. And he's a billionaire, so people were like really suspect, like, why is this guy coming in? They didn't understand that his mother was an elementary school teacher in, I forget right now where he's from, but his reasons were the right reasons.
Bring music back. Or keep it there, yeah.
But just everything. It's like all about the kids and supporting the teachers.
They cut the arts and music from my older daughter's school. And we took her out of school, and then we had to put her into a private school because that was too important.
It's the last thing they should cut. Yeah. There's so many.
They were watching movies, like just to kill time, movies that had nothing to do with the curriculum. They were just short-staffed and underfunded. And
it's brutal.
Brutal, yeah.
So when he got that job, within the first week, I didn't know what was going to come of it, but I emailed him and I said, hey, if there's anything I can do to help, get, like, how do we get music back in schools?
Yeah.
Can I do anything? Can I help? I kind of expected him not to even answer because I thought he'd be hammered. And within 24 hours, he wrote back. He said, come in, have a meeting. I'll assemble a bunch of people to talk about it.
Amazing.
And so we did. And then he discovered this crazy thing in the California budget. There was about $800 million. No, actually closer to $900 million that was already funded, but it wasn't really being used for much of anything. And he realized if he could write a bill and if we could drum up enough support for it, he could reallocate that to support and create brand new programs for art and music in public schools. And he got it done.
That's really great.
He got it done.
That affects so many people.
Every year. That's every year, almost $1 billion every year in California.
Amazing.
So like I had like a tiny little part of that. Just like trying to move.
That's big. That's great.
Well, it's all him, but trying to move stuff like that forward in the smallest way, in a macro way like that.
That's great. So this podcast is also to inspire people, and anyone who wants to make music or write songs and doesn't know how to start, maybe you could give a few tips of if someone wants to get into songwriting, what are like the do's and don'ts, and producing and being an artist, maybe those 3 fields, if you could share some insight.
It's an excellent question. I'm asked less articulate versions of that question a lot. And my answer is, the answers are right in front of you by listening to your favorite records. It's all there. No one's hiding anything. They're putting their very best work out. It's right there for you to digest, to learn from, and for me, I feel like the way it's most applicable to upping your own ability, upping your own game, is to then compare that stuff to what I do it myself. I compare my favorite records made by other people that I put on a real pedestal to what I'm doing. I do it with songs, I do it with productions, I do it with mixes. And I've been doing that since the mid 2000s. A great engineer producer named Jack Joseph Puig suggested that I do that with mixes and that he does it. While he's mixing, he'll mix for an hour or two, then he'll stop and he'll play from a playlist of his favorite mixes done by other people, records he had nothing to do with. Try to volume match so it's the same level. Otherwise, anything louder always sounds better. And then go back to what you're working on. It's really helpful. But you can do that with songwriting. People will say, how do I write like Adele? Well, it's right there. She's putting her best stuff out there. There it is. Get
inspired, yeah.
If you want to learn, you don't need to have a conversation with her. I mean, it will be a great conversation, but it's not like she's holding on to her best stuff.
Yeah.
She's putting out her best stuff. It's right there, Comparison's really helpful, like an A/B test.
Yeah.
And it can be brutal. Especially the mix thing that Jack Joseph Puig had suggested to me in 2005. And I was trying my hardest to mix stuff, but I don't think I was very good. I still don't really like my own mixes.
Well, I think you're known for just great sonics, great like putting the music together in a way that makes the most sense. One question I want to ask you, what's on your playlist these days? Like on your phone, what do you listen to?
I like listening to stuff that sounds different than what I work on. So I listen to a lot of classical music at home. I have a very, very, very long jazz playlist that I listen to. I like listening to music from various regions around the world, music in other languages. I like listening to things that are mysterious to me. If I know too much about it, then it's like, I feel like I'm not being fed or something.
Do you know Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of his voice.
So when he passed away, I was in London. And I was really upset, and I got in this taxi, and I just tried, and the taxi driver was playing his music, and I said, "Oh, this guy is like so upset. He's one of my favorite singers." He's like, "He was one of my best friends," and he just started talking, and I mean, what a massive!
I saw him live a long time ago in Munich. Yeah, incredible. And then his son, I saw him also. His son is really good too.
I don't know about his son.
A little bit thinner voice, not as saturated and thick. But as far as vocal skills, that's one of the best singers I've ever heard. It's incredible what he does.
You know, Maya Angelou has a great quote, like, no one will remember what you've said or what you've done, but they'll remember how you
feel.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, I had this epiphany recently that you might look amazing or you might say incredible things, but really if you want to meet somebody, impress somebody, that's all it is how you can make them feel. And
right.
that it's not about the beauty or about if you're cool or whatever it is. It's just how do they feel when they're around you. And if you can figure that out, you win. That's incredible. It's that simple.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Like we care about makeup, whatever it is. But it's really, if we know how to make someone feel great, we win. That's incredible.
My therapist said something really brilliant lately. She said, she's like, look, texts and emails are going to be the death of us.
Because they have no emotions attached.
Yeah, there's no nuance. There's no what we're doing right now where I can see you and I get your energy coming off you and I hear your voice and I see your facial expressions. But she said, forget the content. Just focus on the feeling.
Yeah, that is the most profound thing, yeah. Are there some particular moments when you work with Adele that are memorable?
Oh every moment. She truly was 21.
Yeah.
I got to spend 3 days with her when she was writing for the 21 album. And, nobody knew that it was going to do what it did.
Yeah.
We just knew that she was really a very special, very bright, and a great songwriter. Very few people talk about what a great writer she is. Those are all her melodies. Those are all her words.
Wow.
She's an incredible, incredible writer. And of course, she's an incredible singer, but she's as good a writer as she is a singer, I think. I mean, I watched it happen. So we wrote 2 songs. One of them, they were both music ideas I heard in my head driving into the studio. One was sort of this like kind of hyper, sort of Bo Diddley weird thing, and it didn't fit the 21 album at all. We had fun writing. And the other was a song called One and Only, which wound up going on the record. And Dan Wilson came in to help finish it.
Great.
And watching her, I was playing the music that I heard in my head driving in the car. I was just playing it on the piano. And she said, can you just sort of loop that? And she's kind of walking around,
nice,
making these weird little sounds, scratching away. She said, keep going. I'm playing. And she's so sweet. She's so self-effacing and so wonderfully confident but humble. And I remember, I'll never forget, I remember her saying, look, this might be complete shite, but what do you think of this?
Yeah.
She said, can you just start again? And so I started, and she sang in full voice, starting on a high C, sitting beside me on the piano bench. I dare you to let me be your one and only. In full voice, which starts on a high C. I can't sing. Dare you to let me be your one and only. I was like, what's happening?
Amazing.
And she sang the whole chorus.
Yeah.
And it was over. And she's like, well, what do you think? And I felt like I was just going to split apart. And I remember just kind of doing that. I was sort of like laughing, like, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, that was mind blowing. It sort of destroyed all writing sessions for me after that point, because she's just so
crazy,
sweet, and she's just so mind blowingly good. And then has this freakish ability to then sing like that.
Yeah.
You know, she can come up with a lyric like, I dare you to let me be your one and only. Who writes it? It almost sounds like a Leonard Cohen line. It's unbelievable.
So I want to touch on a few of the artists you work with, and maybe just a very quick memory that you want to bring up, maybe.
Sure.
Elton John.
So Elton John was from my days of being a session musician, and I played with K.D. Lang, the great singer K.D. Lang. I played with her from 1992 through 94.
Yeah.
And her producer, one of her producers, a lovely guy named Greg Penny, was then at the end of that tour, he was producing the Elton John Duets album.
Yeah.
And he called me to play Hammond B3 on a duet with Elton and Little Richard. And the track was basically done. It was crazy. It had the Andre Crouch Gospel Choir singing on it. It had, you know, Nathan East on bass, Kurt Biscayne on drums, the Jerry Hayes horn section, the same horn section as Thriller. So I remember sitting in the middle of that big room at East West, just a Hammond B3 and the Leslie, and all this stuff in my headphones, and playing on it. It was just this dream session. I didn't meet Elton then. I've met him a bunch of times after that. It was an unbelievable experience, and I was just kind of so nervous, but and then they very sweetly like sent me a plaque for it. You know, I just played an overdub of an organ on one song, but I remember like hearing Little Richard's voice, and then Greg Penny very sweetly, so cool.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, how old was I then? 24, 25 maybe. He let me make a rough mix and record it to cassette. He let me keep the cassette of that, and I just muted everything except Elton's voice, Elton's piano, Little Richard's voice, and my Hammond. And I still have it somewhere. I'll just send it to you. It's really sweet. It just sounds like we're in church.
And now moving on to Taylor Swift.
That was crazy. She's great to work with. She's a hard worker. Again, my favorite combo of humble and confident, and not afraid to try stuff. She had written this beautiful song with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I got to produce it. It was nuts. It all happened really kind of fast and furious for this.
Great. And 21 Pilots.
Oh my goodness. I was so lucky to meet them. What an explosive. And it was at a great time of their career too, where they're from, oh my God, I'm forgetting the name of the town. I know all these people that are from there.
That's okay.
I'm blanking. Anyway, everyone knew regionally what a big deal they were, but they had not, you know, they were like a regional phenomenon. I knew, and Pete Gambarg at Atlantic knew, and Fueled by Ramen knew how great they were. Yeah. So it was very exciting to like watch an explosive talent like that on the precipice of, well, this might happen. This might be, you know, certainly.
It was undeniable. It was so in your face. So. It just felt so intense.
Yeah. I loved it. They were so collaborative, and they brought so much to the table. And I'm really proud of the record. And I think you can hear it in Vessel when you listen to it. You just hear the sort of like the kismet and the, very lucky to be involved with that.
Yeah. Last one, Dua Lipa.
What a great writer. Again, I don't think anyone understands what a great writer she is. She was a kid the first time I met her. I think she was 18.
Wow.
Her management was having her, you know, go all around the world writing with different people. Yeah. And she had great instincts. She had great writing instincts, and still does. And she could, you know, Katy Perry's kind of the same way, where they could both have careers as just like sort of serious, like singer-songwriters. Yeah. And then at some point realized they're also really good at being kind of entertainers as well. And it kind of took on this bigger, glitzier thing. But Dua is a heavy-duty talent.
Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking.
And if you guys like what you saw, please, if you leave a review, if you leave a 5-star review, that would be incredible. And then please like and subscribe. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.